2024 is upon us, and while I'm not one for New Year's resolutions, I definitely have a few goals for this year. Most of those goals are to do with reading, but there are a few others I'm going to talk about afterwards as well. Call them resolutions if you like, but these are my reading goals for 2024. Once you're done with listening to mine, let me know yours in the comments below. And if you want to support me into 2024 in making this channel even better, you can support me on Patreon. My patrons are the most incredible people. They got me through 2023, and I want to keep making this channel better and better. My first reading goal of 2024 requires me to admit something that's a little bit awkward, considering the roots of this channel. When the Books and Bao website was first formed, our goal was to write about East Asian literature in translation, as well as travel and food related to East Asia. And so the website very quickly and proudly became a kind of source of news and reviews when it comes to East Asian literature in translation. From there we grew to covering all sorts of world literature, and the channel reflected that. But in 2023, I am very aware that I was not reading and reviewing enough literature in translation. Looking back on this year, I have spent so much of it in terms of reading on queer literature, which I will continue to read, of course. I am queer and I love supporting queer literature forever and always. But also on plenty of gothic and horror fiction. And for 2024, I want to return to what this was originally all about: promoting and celebrating fiction in translation. There are so many great books coming out in 2024 from Japan, Korea, Argentina, the Netherlands, all countries whose literature I have gone on record as loving and supporting for years now. But I also want to read more books from the Middle East, from India, from Eastern Europe, from other parts of Latin America. I've particularly let myself down when it comes to Chinese fiction. I am a big fan of so many Chinese authors, and yet in 2023 I only read one new Chinese novel. So for 2024, my focus is back on literature in translation. My second 2024 goal is to read more poetry and talk more about poetry. I love poetry, and I've been writing some of my own recently. Poetry is gorgeous, and I so often ignore that. I've ignored it for a long time. As someone who loves literature and music, it's kind of ridiculous that I don't put the two together and read and enjoy more poetry. And so I need some help with that. If you can let me know in the comments some of your favorite poets and poems, I would really appreciate it. And as someone who loves feminist literature and queer literature, that's also what I'm looking for in my poetry. Let me know your favorite feminist poets, your favorite queer poets, trans poets. I want powerful, political, angry poetry about colonialism, about patriarchy, about power struggles, about class divides. That's the poetry I'm looking for. I've read quite a lot of feminist poetry over the last year or two, and I want to keep going, so please recommend me great poets from all walks of life who have something to write about, something they're angry about. I really want to cover more poetry. I'd love to find and fall in love with great poets, especially those who are queer and feminist. And I want to talk about them. I want to dedicate videos to poetry. I want to read some poetry to you and show you how beautiful it is, but I need to find it first. In fact, pretty soon I think I'll put together all of the great feminist poetry that I've read over the last 2 years, and I'll make a video about that to start with, and then move on to finding some new stuff. My third reading goal for 2024 is to read more young adult fiction. I pretty much ended 2023 by giving an apology to YA literature. I recently discovered the queer horror novels of YA author Andrew Joseph White. They are incredible, and they changed my perspective on YA fiction. I've spent way too long being pompous and arrogant and dismissive when it comes to young adult fiction, and I'm not doing that anymore. And it's kind of ridiculous given how much of a fan of the Hunger Games books I was when they first came out. And the films as well are pretty decent. After reading the books of Andrew Joseph White, I talked about Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. They are an incredible author, and Iron Widow is one of the best books that I read this year. An absolutely incredible piece of Chinese history-inspired young adult science fiction, full of queerness and polyamory. What a trip, what an amazing novel. I need way more great young adult queer, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. I'm going to dedicate a decent amount of time, focus, and attention in 2024 on reading good young adult fiction. I know that there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and no, I'm not going to read the books of Sarah J. Maas, but I'm definitely going to focus and give some love and attention to good YA fiction. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. Those are my 3 reading goals. A focused return to literature in translation, reading more poetry, especially that which is queer and feminist, and giving some love and attention to YA fiction. But I also have a few goals that are outside of reading. As I mentioned before, I have recently written some poetry, and I'm going to start submitting it. I've been researching and checking out online journals and print magazines that publish short stories and poetry, and I'm going to start submitting my own to lots of different places, both online and print publications. I've easily got a full book's worth of short stories and a decent handful of poetry, and I need to start sending all of that out. I want my own stuff published. Like every single bookworm on the planet, I have of course written a lot of stuff of my own, and none of it has ever been published. I have written and finished like 5 or 6 novels in my life. I send them off to publishers, they don't get published, they clearly weren't very good, I move on, I start another one, and I repeat the process. But I'm going to refocus that. I want to hone my craft when it comes to writing poetry and short stories, and just keep sending those out to online publications and print magazines. And we'll see what comes of it. I'm excited to see if I can get anything published this year. A single poem I will call a win. I also have one more enormous goal for 2024, and I can't tell you anything about it at all yet. Just know that there is something that I would like to accomplish in 2024. Something very, very big. And I really mean that. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Just please root for me, and I'll let you know more if and when it happens. There you go. A nice simple video to kind of finish off this year. Those are my goals for 2024. As I said at the beginning, if you would like to support me on Patreon, the last few months have been incredibly difficult financially. I've talked about how Google has been reworking its algorithm over and over again and has screwed over probably tens of thousands of content creators who write blogs and work on websites and work in SEO, etc., etc. Times are tough for all of us, and if you can throw me $1 a month, you'll not only help keep this channel alive and keep me fed, but you'll also be giving me the encouragement to keep pushing the channel forward, to keep growing it, and keep doing new things with it. If you can support me, even with just $1 a month, I would hugely appreciate it. Happy New Year, and subscribe for books.